Hi, I'm Devin Toland. We are doing a presentation on video games. Specifically, do they cause violence? Now, a lot of people today do play video games. Games are aimed for people in their teens, early childhood, teens to some people are still playing in their mid 30s. It's definitely something that is a pastime for generations. Uh, Christopher Ferguson of Stetson University, who is an associate professor of psychology, suggests that violent video games may reduce societal violence rather than increasing it. Now, for myself, what I play is an MMORPG, which is a massive multi-online role-playing game, specifically Final Fantasy 14. And I do consider it a time for relaxation, even though that I know the people I will raid with, uh, we do have strategies for defeating certain bosses, and I can agree that there's definitely stress or anxiety that goes with this, but it is not something that I feel would ever spill out into the real world. There are several other genres of video games. To name a few is action, role play, sports, strategy, or even simulators. Now, this next clip is with Deadpool from the 2016 film with Ryan Reynolds, and all it is a 30-second clip. So we'll go ahead and just see what it has.
To a whole new level.
Again, that was with Ryan Reynolds. The film itself made $738 million. It also broke several records. This is just a film or a movie, so we can say that violence isn't specifically only with video games, but there are other media outlets for it as well. Next, we have this picture on the screen. We have the rating system. It is distributed by the ESRB, rather known as the Electronic Software Rating Board. The first one is for early childhood. Those are games meant for very young children. They are usually very simple and also very colorful. Next is everyone, and that is for people as young children or teens or even adults. Even my grandparents would enjoy playing Mario, right? Next, we have E10 plus. That is meant for children that are a little older. They can handle some content that is not to seem too childish. Next, we have teen. The content for that can be described as possibly suggestive, but they don't really dive into anything specific. Next, we have mature 17 plus. This is where a lot of first-person shooters are, specifically like Grand Theft Auto 5. And the next two, which is adults only 18 plus and rating pending. Those two are definitely going to have a lot of content that is going to be violent, sexual, or even suggestive with alcohol and drugs. The ESRB is on all games within the United States. And society's views on video game violence is that they see a lot of real violence on TV, And with that, they see violence that their kids are playing, and they tend to associate them together. Next, we have the authenticity of video games. I'll agree that there are games that have developers research a lot of what's the graphics for certain scenarios, with explosions to objects being removed. There is definitely uh, a lot of consideration and care taken into what goes in or how something functions with that as well. Next, we have generational ghost hunting. And what that is the older generation not really understanding what a video game is. Uh, a lot of people will play video games to pass the time or to relax, but a lot of people don't really see something that can be violent as a way to relax. And so I think part of what it is that they don't understand how you find it enjoyable or how you find the thrill of it. Next, we have simulators used beyond gamers. And what that is referring to is there are video games that are used with combat experience, such as law enforcement or armed services. Next, we have Preston, who will dive a little bit deeper into specific video games as well. Thank you.
When it comes to the media, they help enforce a stereotype that video games are violent. What do they do to help enforce this stereotype? Whenever there's a mass shooting, games are always somewhat related to the topics that they end up talking about. They always post whatever mass murderer is involved in it, and they blast his name on the screen like you see right now, and always have concerns about the violent video games that they play and how it ends up affecting the mass shootings and stuff like that go on. They will put two people on a screen that are newscasters or experts on the topic, and they will always have them go head to head and debate whether that video games were to blame or anything like that. So what games are always blamed? Grand Theft Auto is a huge one. And this is because it is a mature game, and it's rated that way for a reason, to where only 17-year-old and older people are supposed to play it. When little kids are playing it, it might have an effect on them, but you really can't blame just the video games for any violence or aggression that they might have. Grand Theft Auto, you're able to run around and steal cars and kill people, and the whole game is revolved around violence and theft. Basically, Grand Theft Auto, it is in the title. And the another one is Call of Duty. This is probably the most popular first-person shooter that has been around for years, many years now, probably since the early 2000s. And it's one where you're always going in and your main primary goal is to kill the other team. You're always going in there trying to kill, trying to kill, trying to kill. This does not mean that it gets programmed into somebody's head that I need to kill somebody. You're never going to equate a video game with real life. And if somebody does that, that is a mental health issue and not a video game issue. The Tom Clancy series is another video game that is almost more realistic. It's a tactical shooter where you're more in the army and you have to break down walls and try and execute missions. And then Fortnite is a very popular one right now, especially with younger kids. It's an easily accessible game that's free to play, so any kid can get on it and play it. And it's a battle royale mode where you're trying to be the last person standing. So you try and shoot and kill everybody else in the game until you're the last person standing. And that's the main goal or accomplishment, is to be that last person. You're always trying to win, and you're always trying to shoot the other people. And this it doesn't program kids to be more aggressive. It's a fun outlet that keeps them out of trouble and off the streets. That's all it is. It's nothing that will make your kids violent or more something leaning towards a mass shooting. That's just not how we work as a society. And then even research on game violence. We've had studies of 3,000 participants that comes to a conclusion that video games do not necessarily increase aggression, which is true. We have so many other things in the world that help or hurt our society and end up with mass shootings or just violence and fighting. And then another study that has said that youth violence rates have actually dropped 29% between 2002 and 2014. And that could be a huge deal because this is when video games became really accessible. This was the point when video games were becoming more realistic and they're also just becoming more accessible in general. The consoles were becoming cheaper, video games were becoming cheaper. There was more of them to play, and a lot of them involved fighting games, shooting games, and the introduction of online gaming where you can fight with other people and try and kill other people. But since there's been this drop, I believe video games have actually helped stop some of this aggression, stop some of this violence, just because it keeps kids off the streets and it keeps them doing something else. Like video games have more of a benefit than a drawback to them. Thank you. That's my section.
So as my other presenters have suggested, that video games are not the sole purpose or influence for violence in our society today. There are a lot of other outlets that are big influences in our society today. Some of those include television, movies, books, comic books, and also music. Television is a very big thing because everybody in America either streams it or they are watching it, at the end of the night or, as soon as they get up, whatever. TV is always on and is a part of our society today. In one of our beginning clips, we shared a quick thing from Deadpool. And from there, you can see that it's very graphic and very gory, and there's a ton of violence in there. To me personally, that is a lot more of an indicator for someone who would be more violent, simply because it's other humans actually, performing these actions on other humans. Whereas video games is something that's been created and is computer generated, whereas movies, it's sometimes hard to differentiate the difference between real life and what's make-believe. One of the other things too that is important, is an important influencer, is books and comic books. Comic books is another reference to Deadpool and the Deadpool series. It's definitely not something that's suited for kids. And there's a reason why Deadpool was rated R and is not appropriate for those under the age of 17. But books and comic books, I think, is another big thing based on our research too, is something that is a influencer in violence, because this is something that directly taps into your imagination, and you have to create these situations in your head where you visualize them and get the most of the effect that the author is trying to give for you. Music's a big thing too, because everybody listens to music. Pop culture is a very important thing in our society, and music is a very big influencer in how you behave. A quick thing that you can do is to check yourself when you're listening to a certain type of music and gauge what your mood is in. Music has a very profound effect on what kind of mood we have. And some of the pop culture music is not it's not something that we really think about, but it really affects and influences our lives. A lot of the popular music is, hip hop and rap. I know that they get a bad rap. See what I did there. But a lot of the lyrics that they use is not something that you would want your 10-year-old or your 8-year-old listening to. A lot of their music is a reference to violence, gang violence, drugs, sex, you name it. That's a big influencer on our society today. Another big thing too is social media. Everybody has access to social media these days. Anybody can create one. And social media is something that you can be whoever you want to be, regardless of who you actually are in real life. Twitter is a big thing where people always attack Twitter. Twitter has a kind of like a rap of, you can be sarcastic, you can be mean, you can be brutal, you can bully. Whereas Instagram doesn't have it as much, and Facebook also has a lot of negativity and a lot of threats and different things like that. But anyone can access these platforms and have access to the violent and these influencers in their life. But to recap, we just want to suggest, as we've talked about before, that video games is not as a direct influencer to violence. The quote that we shared at the beginning is very good, and I just want to reiterate with violent video games may reduce social violence rather than increasing it. And we want each of us to take a moment to really get perspective on where violence plays or where violence stems from, and not really throw a blanket statement over to cover some uneducated belief. Thank you for your time, and we appreciate being given this platform. Thanks.